Hello, and thank you for joining us again today on the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast with me, Errol Lawson, where we're so passionate about bringing inspirational leaders from around the world, Christian leaders in business, in church ministry, in the marketplace, who are doing great things for the glory of God. We want you to hear their stories, hear their lessons learned, hear their journeys, and be inspired to take your personal leadership to the next level. I'm confident that every single leadership episode is going to inspire you to be the very best that you can be. Now, I really encourage you to go back and listen to previous episodes. Like, we've done so many interviews now, men and women from across the world who are doing great things for God. Go back and listen to the interviews. You can check out our page at www.therisinggenerationpodcast.com or go to our iTunes page and listen there if you're on Apple, or our Stitcher page if you're on Android, and listen to our previous episodes. Some great nuggets of wisdom waiting there for you. Also ask that you go to our iTunes page or Stitcher page and give us maybe a 4 or 5 star rating if you enjoy the podcast. And the more ratings you get, the more we go up the rankings, and of course the more listeners that we'll get. And so we'd really appreciate your help with that. Now, if you're listening today as well and you get some kind of, you're going to be stirred and you're getting some questions are coming up for you and you want some more support, please feel free to email me directly. And my email is errol@errollawson.com. Email me and we do a question, and I'll be happy to offer you some support if I can do. Or maybe you want some coaching. And what we're doing right now is we're offering a free 30 to 45 minute coaching session with anybody out there. Maybe you're a leader, you're a pastor, you're a lay leader, you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, and you want some coaching around an issue or a question that has arisen for you as you've been listening to the podcast. So please feel free to email me. We'll get you booked in. If you're wondering what coaching is, it's not counseling, it's not mentoring as such. It's more me sitting down with you, whether in person if you're local or over Skype, and to simply have a conversation and asking you questions to help you get the clarity you're looking for in your business, ministry, or with an idea you're working on right now. Yeah, so it's completely free of charge, no obligation at all. But feel free to email me at errol@errollawson.com and we'll get you booked in right away. All right, so get ready to enjoy this next episode. I pray that you'll enjoy it, and please share with your friends or your colleagues or someone you think might also benefit from hearing this great interview. Thank you for listening again. God bless you. Hello, and thank you for joining us on the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast today. You know, we do our best to bring you the best, most influential, most passionate, committed Christian leaders from around the world for you to hear their stories, their life experiences, and just how they've achieved or come to where they've come to in their life or in their ministry journeys. And today, I'm really excited to have with us Jenni Catron. Jenni Catron is a writer, speaker, and leadership coach who consults churches and nonprofits to help them lead from their extraordinary best. Her passion is to lead well and to inspire, equip and encourage others to do the same. She speaks at conferences and churches nationwide, seeking to help others develop their leadership gifts and lead confidently in the different spheres of influence God has granted them. Additionally, she consults with individuals and teams on leadership and organizational health. Jenni is the author of several books, including Clout, Discover and Unleash Your God-Given Influence, and The 4 Dimensions of Extraordinary Leadership. Jenni blogs at www.jennicatron.com, which we'll hear more about a bit later on. And she also contributes to a number of other online publications as well. Outreach Magazine has recognized her as one of 30 emerging influencers reshaping church leadership. She's a leader who loves putting feet to vision. Jenni has served on the executive leadership teams of Menlo Church in Menlo Park, California, and Crosspoint Church in Nashville, Tennessee. And prior to ministry leadership, she worked as an artist development director in the Christian music industry. Jenni loves a fabulous cup of tea, great books, learning the game of tennis, and hanging out with her husband and their border collie. Jenni, good morning where you are. Good evening here.
Yes.
Great to have you today, Jenni. Great bio there. Lots of stuff you're up to and you've done so far. Just fill in any gaps, first of all, Jenni, if there are any gaps in your biography there, and give us a glimpse into your world.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It's fun I always love talking leadership. I often say I'm a leadership junkie. I'll find a leadership lesson in just about everything. And so it's fun to be here. I think my bio covered a lot of it, but, at the crux of it all is just my passion and my heart for leadership and developing people and drawing out the best in them. And so, I'm just privileged that I get to be a part of the leadership conversation in a lot of spaces. And I love talking, reading, writing, and learning about leadership as much as I possibly can.
Awesome. Well, we're going to get into some of that leadership stuff in a moment. Jenni, tell us first of all, tell us a story about how you began doing what you're doing right now and how you knew that this is what God had called you to do.
Yeah. I was that kid growing up who always was put in places of responsibility. I think I was a bit of a responsible child. And, so whether it was, running the bake sale for student ministry or organizing the VBS program for children or, coordinating some event at school, I was always that kid that got put in charge of stuff.
Right.
And I didn't know that was leadership. Mm-hmm. I just kind of figured I was, being a good kid. But when I got into, I pursued a career in the music business. I always loved music. I loved working with creatives. I am a bit creative myself, but not so much that I would have been an aspiring artist. So I really wanted to come alongside people who were making an impact on culture and influencing the world in a positive way. And so I pursued a career in the Christian music business here in the States and jumped into that just full force. And shortly into my career, I realized that things were a lot more complex than just, crossing off the to-do list or getting all the tasks done. But this art of working with people was something that started to really kind of challenge me in some ways. I remember when I was first given, I had my first employee who was reporting to me. Mm-hmm. And, so I'm super excited that I've been promoted to a position that has a paid staff person working for me. And I'm probably 23 years old at this point. And very quickly, that employee was not meeting my expectations. And I thought, oh, this is just not going to work out. This employee is just not going to cut it. And I went into the vice president's office, and he was a mentor in my life. And I, proceeded to complain about this employee and all the things that they were doing wrong and why we needed to, let him go and get this other person. And that leader looked at me and he said, Jenni, you're working with people, you're not working with widgets. And if you want to work with people, you're going to have to learn how to lead them.
Wow.
And that was really the aha moment for me of the importance and the significance of leadership, in that I couldn't just be this taskmaster trying to just direct and control everybody. I was really going to have to learn the heart of the people I was leading and figure out how to bring out their best while also helping pursue the goals and the responsibilities that I had for the organization. Wow. And so that moment is still so vivid to me, because it was like the light bulb went on and I realized this isn't just about getting a bunch of stuff done. Mm-hmm. It's really about bringing out the best of people to get the stuff done. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that began my journey of going, okay, well, how do you do this well? Mm-hmm. And that's been the story ever since. So obviously I went from music business, I went into full-time ministry. And I think ministry is some of the most complex leadership there is. I think any kind of nonprofit and ministry sector where you're leading people who aren't getting a paycheck to be there, you've got to figure out how to really lead and motivate and inspire.
Can you just say a bit about that? So you say you're in full-time ministry. In what capacity?
Okay, so I went into ministry as the first ministry role I had was as an executive director at a church called Cross Point in Nashville, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And the executive director was the person number two, basically senior pastor, and then myself. Mm-hmm. And so I was responsible there for leading all of the staff, leading all the day-to-day operational components of the church, so that the senior pastor could really focus on teaching and pastoring, and I could take on a lot of the other responsibilities of running at the church when I started was 500 attendees, and today it's over 7,000 attendees.
Wow.
And so, you can imagine various levels of leadership and responsibilities through that trajectory.
So how did you know that that's where you were meant to be? Like, did you grow up in the church? Was your faith always a big part of your life? How did you kind of suddenly get to from 23 years old to executive kind of pastor?
Yeah. So I came to faith when I was 8 years old, and my family had kind of a rough trajectory to that point. And so although I was only 8, and that's pretty young to come to faith, it was a very critical turning point for my family. My parents had divorced. There was, abuse and drugs and alcohol and all kinds of things in our history. And so when it was my great uncle who invited my mom and my sister and I to church, when we came to church, when we came to faith, and it was a turning point in our family. And so the church became really important to me. So from that time on, growing up as a kid, I was involved in the church anytime the doors were open. So I have a deep love and heart for the church because I was a part of a family story where it significantly changed the trajectory of our family. I never actually envisioned myself working at a church. I grew up in rural northern Wisconsin, and our churches were smaller, and there weren't a lot of paid staff. So I didn't have a vision of what I would do on staff at a church, but I always felt like I would serve and be a part of the local church. So I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, started my career in the music business. And while we were there, my husband and I were involved in, a couple different churches, and we jumped on board for the church plant for Crosspoint Church. So we're, again, volunteer leaders, just serving, being a part of the local church. And then as the church was growing pretty rapidly, Pete Wilson, who's a senior leader at Crosspoint, the senior pastor, reached out to me and said, "Hey, I think you should come and help me, lead this organization that's growing so rapidly." He knew my heart for leadership. He had seen what I was doing in the music business and felt like those gifts and skills could be applied to the church context. And so it was completely a left turn for me. I did not anticipate being in ministry at all as a full-time, paid role. And I remember the day where I was watching, I was helping direct the services at Crosspoint. This was still as a volunteer. And I was wrestling with, okay, God, what would I do in the church? How does that look? I don't even understand. And it was really the connection of, in the music business, I was helping what I always say, put feet to the vision of that Christian artist. That artist is, singing and writing and playing their music. Well, I was the one that helped put it into the hands of others. And I just felt like God showed me, I need you to put that skill behind this vision at this church under this. So again, it was one of those moments that it was just very vivid, very clear that I felt like God was calling me to make a really significant change that was, I had people in the music business saying, you're committing career suicide. What are you doing, Jenny? I had this thriving career in the music business, and I take this turn and go into ministry. And obviously that's been one of the best decisions that I could have made. And I felt like God really had directed that.
That is awesome. That is an amazing story. There's so much in that story. I love the fact that the minister at the time just simply, he saw your gift and he built something around your gift and trusted the grace of God in your life and the gift that God had given you and placed you in that position. Even though you hadn't kind of been raised up in church leadership as such, but he gave you that opportunity and you smashed it, man. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was fun.
So much in that. Thank you, man. And in all of that, I guess, what's been your number one leadership challenge so far? Tell us a story about that.
Yeah, I think, I do think that lesson of, my first employee was probably one of my greatest challenges, but the challenge in that was recognizing that you never have complete control as a leader. I think sometimes we aspire to leadership or positions of authority because, it probably subconsciously for most of us, but it's this desire to kind of be able to direct and control everything. And I think one of the biggest challenges for me, I am a control freak by nature. I am wired to want to organize, manage, manipulate, and control my world. And I think one of the things that leadership has taught me is that leadership is messy because we're working with people and people are complex. And So really developing a heart for the people we serve more than the task that we're trying to accomplish, I think is continually the biggest challenge for me, because I'm very driven. I'm very wired to want to get a lot of things done. And oftentimes that forces me to slow down, to see people, and to bring people along with me in that journey. And I think that is continually the biggest challenge for me as a leader.
And how do you resolve that within yourself and with those that you're leading?
Yeah, I think I see it quicker. Now that I've got a couple decades of leadership under my belt, I think I see it a little quicker than I have in the past. I've seen the benefit of slowing down and working with people rather than just kind of bulldozing them and running them over. So, I think I can look back at some of what I would say are my leadership casualties, the places where sometimes I didn't lead as well as I ought to have, or I, was a little too strong, intense, directive with somebody, and it hurt a relationship, and that took time to repair. So I think that I think I see that tendency in myself much quicker than I have in the past, and I think those lessons learned have me more sensitive and aware these days.
Are you seriously fired up about developing leaders and growing your church to the next level? Could you do with someone to help you get some extra clarity, or to be a sounding board for your plans and ideas? Great athletes have coaches, so do great leaders. The right leadership coach for you will result in increasing your performance and dramatically increase the results you achieve. Errol is an experienced leadership coach, award-winning author and entrepreneur, and pastor. He has interviewed over 60 of the most influential Christian leaders from around the world for the Rising Generation Leadership podcast, and uses his unique insights, leadership experience, and his passion for the gospel to coach Christian leaders and help them to discover the clarity, confidence, and competence they are looking for. If you're ready to go to the next level, leverage Errol's experience and extensive network of contacts to help grow your ministry or support you in your personal and professional development. To experience the power and benefit of Errol's coaching, contact us now to arrange a free 30-minute strategy session that will help you to understand exactly what your next step needs to be. Email admin@errollawson.com right now to schedule your call.
What would you say to a younger version of yourself who's in that situation right now, and they're kind of like, I keep doing this, I keep making these mistakes, and they're struggling with that issue? Yeah. What advice would you give to them?
It's great, because I feel like, time has taught me that lesson. But I think if I went back, I'd like to say that I would hear it, but I think sometimes when you're wired that way, I think sometimes you just have to learn it. But I would just encourage that person who is maybe starting to see that pattern in themselves to say, really heed that and recognize that being more attentive to people. I mean, and this is the thing I feel like I'm learning, is that leadership really isn't about us. It's, it's not really about me. It's not really for me. I think sometimes we pursue roles of leadership for the accomplishment, the responsibility, the authority,
status.
The status. And we know this, but I think we still subconsciously pursue leadership sometimes for those wrong reasons. And leadership really is about servanthood. Leadership really is about others.
Come on.
And so I think really coming to terms with that if you're really passionate about leadership is all about others. And you have to die to self all the time in order to really see the people around you and recognize that your responsibility is really to bring out their best.
It's great. It's brilliant, man. And a thought comes to mind. I think it was TJ. Somebody had say not too long ago that if you've got a project or an idea that you're working on and it hasn't got a person assigned to it or a team assigned to it, it's an orphan. And just when you're starting out and you begin to think about being a lone ranger, remind yourself that it's not about you. You need to get a team around that, or a person around that project or idea for it to function and flourish. How do you now, at this stage in your journey, how do you now define success, Jenni?
Yeah, I think that success is really about stewarding the gifts that God has given you to the best of your ability and being faithful to that. I think that, again, in my drivenness, sometimes I want to rush ahead to, opportunities, goals, accomplishments, and all those things are good with the right perspective. So I'm not saying you don't, plan and set goals and have, dreams for the future. But I think sometimes we can get so focused on that and fixated on that we neglect to steward what God has given us right now.
Right.
And so I think success for me is really about recognizing, okay, where has God placed me right now? I talk about this in my book, Clout, about influence, and that oftentimes we're so concerned about everything that's out there that we haven't accomplished yet. And we neglect what we have right in front of us. And that can mean, the tasks, the responsibilities, the influence, the people. What has God put in front of you right now? What is the gifts that he's given you right now? And how can you steward that to the best of your ability and be faithful with what he's given you right now? And I think that is success. And that opens doors for the opportunities and the things in the future. So I think being faithful and obedient to what you have right now, I think, is what defines success for us.
That's great. And typically, I think John Maxwell said that success can be found in your daily routine, or the secrets to it in your daily routine. Yeah. What do the first 90 minutes of your day typically look like?
Yeah, I'm a morning person, and so I feel like I have my best energy in the morning. So I try to cram everything into my morning time, when I've got that best energy. But those first 90 minutes for me look like, you read it in my bio, but I love a great cup of tea. So typically I get the tea maker going and I'm making a great cup of tea, having some breakfast, and sitting down to read. And it's usually a combination of some scripture, a devotional style book that I'm reading. And I know a lot of people will, talk about your devotions first thing. And I do that because that's my best energy. I'm the most aware, alert. I feel like my mind is sharp. And so that will be usually my first 45 minutes or so, depending on the day. Some days I'll exercise right away because I do think, I like to run. It's good for stress relief and, just keeping me healthy. Some days I'll run right away. Some days I'll jump into work stuff right away. So that kind of varies, but usually I'm trying to organize those first 90 minutes to be thoughtful, reflective time, and then I'm jumping into whatever task is the most critical for me that day, or planning my day. If I haven't planned my day the night before, then I'm going to do that first thing in the morning as well.
That's great. And what other key habits have contributed towards your success?
I think consistency, in that, I'm a person of habit, so I will find habits that I think serve me well. So things like carving out time for reading. I think just ways reading and or podcasts, different ways that I'm learning, essentially, is do I have habits that are allowing me to be consistently learning and growing and getting just knowledge from various sources. And along with that, just the constant learning. So I think those are habits that have served me well through the years, is just that kind of insatiable desire to keep learning and growing, and making sure I've got systems kind of in my life that allow time for that. Because, we're all busy. So, I'll often have people say, Jenni, how do you read so much? And it's only because I am just disciplined about carving out time. It doesn't mean a lot of time. It, typically is about 30 minutes a day. Or I'm listening to a podcast as I'm driving somewhere, or when I'm running, or, just finding ways that I'm creating space for me to take in and learn and grow from other sources.
That's great. And what's your biggest weakness as a leader?
It's a bit of what we talked about before, in that I can be just a little too self-focused, a little too intense, a little too driven, a little bit too much about myself. And I have to be really conscientious of that. If you're familiar with the Enneagram, I'm a 3 on the Enneagram, which is the achiever. And with that personality type, you can just make your world all about you. And that doesn't serve you so well in leadership. So it probably doesn't serve you in life in general. But I just have to be really mindful that I can make life and leadership way too much about me. And that's continuously is a hiccup for me.
And what's your biggest strength?
I think it's kind of the flip side of that I also can get a lot done. I'm somebody who can put a plan into action. So if you have a big goal, you have a big dream. This is why I've always served along senior pastors really well, in that I can put feet to that vision.
Right.
I can say, if I can come alongside a visionary, and if they've got a goal that they want to accomplish, a vision they feel like God has called the organization to, I can start, figuring out how to get that done. And then on my best days, how to get that done through a team, and so I can couple the strengths of that team with the goal of the organization and lead that to accomplishment. And I think when I'm at my best and I'm rightly managing the tension of my drivenness and my need to work with people, I can help bring plans into action. And it's so much fun when it happens that way.
Awesome. And at the beginning of your leadership journey, what was holding you back from going into leadership?
I think in some ways I didn't really even fully understand what true leadership meant. I grew up in a very blue collar, kind of working class culture where it wasn't so much leadership, it was more dictatorship of, you just, and so I didn't have good models of leadership. I didn't really know exactly what that looked like. So I think some of it was just learning what healthy leadership looks like. And then another big hurdle for me was just my own fear and insecurity, or lack of confidence of, could I do this well? How do you do this well? What if I fail? And wrestling all those questions that are really natural, kind of normal, but being able to work through those fears and insecurities and recognize that I'm not going to be perfect before I step into a position of leadership. And so I have to be willing to recognize that I'm not going to get it right all the time. And I need to know that, recognize that, but not try to cover that up either. I think that's one of the things too. I think I was afraid sometimes to step into leadership because, well, what if I couldn't be perfect at it? Well, I'm not going to be perfect at it. Now I need to give it my best. I need to do my best with it. But when I mess up, then I need to be vulnerable enough to admit that to those I lead and those who lead me, and recognize that that's not going to be. I think sometimes I was afraid. Well, then if I mess up, well, then you're just done. And obviously that can vary depending on the mess up. But I'm talking about just the simple things of the simple mistakes that you're going to make because you're not going to do it perfect. But I think that fear of not leading perfectly kind of held me back some.
That's really honest, and I reckon so many people listening will relate to that same feeling.
Yeah, I think. Well, and again, when you're in a position of leadership, we naturally assume that we need to look like we have it all together because other people are following us, other people are, and so vulnerability in leadership is counterintuitive to most of us. And in fact, it really endears us to the people we're leading when they can see that we can acknowledge our weaknesses, our failings, our questions, our doubts, again, within the right balance and the right, if you look like a leader who lacks any confidence, that's going to be a problem. But people want to know that, because they see it when we're fumbling around or we're, and so we've got to be brave enough to admit that and acknowledge that, and yet confidently keep moving forward too.
It's great, man. It's great. And who have been your most significant mentors on your leadership journey?
Yeah, I feel like I have been extraordinarily blessed with people that I would call mentors, although we probably would have never set up an official mentoring relationship, whatever that really looks like. But back in my music business days, there was a guy named Greg who was the president of the company that I worked for. I actually talk about him in my book, The Four Dimensions. Just a really remarkable leader who invested in me significantly. So just working under his leadership for many years, I feel like he was a significant mentor in my life. There's another woman named Tammy Heim, who is the president of Christian Leadership Alliance. Tammy has been a great friend and mentor for probably the last 6 or so years.
Wow.
And, I may see Tammy once every 3 or 4 months because we live in different cities. But every time we sit down, or we, have a phone call, it's an opportunity for me to just ask her questions, get her wisdom on what I'm doing in my life and leadership. And so she's been really valuable. And then, I say I have the mentors I've never met, people like John Maxwell, who have written, just remarkable resources on leadership. And I say he mentors me from afar because I've read and listened to John for years. Yeah. And I know that I'm a better leader because of his work.
Yeah, awesome. If I was to ask you, those let's say those three individuals, so Greg, Tammy, and let's say John, what's the best advice that you think each of those have given you in your journey? So start with Greg.
I think for Greg, Greg taught me to never give up. Right. Greg is an incredibly resilient leader, and so. I just, and I saw him lead through some really difficult times, and he kept a positivity and an optimism, not a Pollyanna, not a like, oh, everything's fine. He was honest about the challenges, but he still had hope for the future. And I think that was probably the crux of it, is that he always inspired us with hope. Even when things were challenging or they were difficult, he didn't lose hope. And I think that's really important for leaders, is that we are really hope casters. We talk about vision casting a lot, but I think being able to inspire people with hope is really valuable. So I learned that from Greg.
It's great.
From Tammy, I learned to believe in yourself. Tammy is really wonderful. She's a wonderful encourager. She always has great words of encouragement and wisdom. She's always, cheering for you. And I think her doing that for me has taught me to do that for others. That now Tammy at the same time has given me feedback. She's spoken into my life. She's given me good coaching, but she's always been a cheerleader first. And I think, young leaders need that person who's speaking, who's just encouraging you to keep going, keep at it. You've got this. And so because of her being such a cheerleader, because she's been a cheerleader, she's also had a voice to be able to speak the truth I've needed to hear too. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think she's taught me a really healthy balance of that. I think there's, I forget who wrote about this, but there's a theory that, you need to give 5 encouragements, 5 praises for every 1 criticism. Yeah. That should be the ratio of 5 to 1. Yeah. And I think Tammy models that well, and that she will give me 5 high fives, encouragements to everyone, like piece of constructive feedback. And that's hard to do. If you've ever tried to do that and really watched yourself, especially with the people that you lead, and try to figure out how do you, because I don't know about you, but for me, I will often assume they know the good, and so when things are going well, I'll just kind of like, oh yeah, I expect that. And then I'll highlight the thing that needs to be critiqued or fixed. And if you challenge yourself as a leader to figure out how to say 5 positive, good things to the people that you're leading to every 1 critique, that's a challenge. But I think it's a challenge worth taking on. So sorry, that was no,
that's great, man. It's great. Is there one thing that John's taught you that stands out for you?
Yeah, I think with John, I think he often says leadership is influence. And I usually will unpack that a little further and say that I think leadership starts with influence. But I think he taught me the importance of recognizing your sphere of influence, the people that you have influence with, and being faithful to your influence with them. Right. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So I know you're doing a lot of things at the moment. What is the one thing you're most fired up about right now?
Yeah, so I recently made a transition into full-time coaching and consulting with leaders, and I am just so excited about that. I have loved my season of working on church staff, but I have such a heart for helping develop leaders and developing leaders in ministry, in nonprofit, people of faith who are living and leading in the trenches every day, like I have such a passion for speaking into their life, encouraging them, giving them resources, helping them to lead better. And so I'm diving into that in the next few months. I'll be making kind of more, be sharing more about specifically what that's looking like. But I'm just having so much fun just dreaming a little bit right now and working on resources and tools to continue to better equip leaders, because ultimately that's my heart.
Awesome. And is there a book or a resource? I know you feel free to mention your own as well. But is there a book or resource that you'd recommend for a leader or entrepreneur? And why that one?
Yes, probably a zillion of them. But I think, just talking about John Maxwell, one of my favorites from him is the 21 most powerful minutes in a leader's day. And that's different from the 21 irrefutable laws. This is the 21 most powerful minutes in a leader's day. And what I love about that book is it is written kind of devotional style. And he takes his 21 laws and he applies that to a leader in scripture. And so then every day you're kind of taking a look at how did Moses apply this leadership principle? And so what I love about it is especially for those of us who are, Christians that are in leadership roles, for us to be able to take scripture and then look at that through a leadership lens. I just love it. I think it's just so rich for people of faith to be able to see that parallel. So I probably reread that book every year or so because it's just fantastic. And another one of my favorites, I have a deep passion to help leaders understand that we really need to lead ourselves first to lead others better. Like we need to lead ourselves well to lead others better. We often skip over our own self-leadership and want to lead everybody else, but typically there's a lot of work we need to do. And Ruth Haley Barton wrote a book called Strengthening the Soul of Your Leadership.
Okay.
And it's one of my absolute favorite, probably one of the books I gift the most to other people, is Strengthening the Soul of Your Leadership. And again, it's a lot about your heart, your soul, your health as a leader. And I think that work is so important for us in leadership seats. So those would be two that I would most recommend.
Awesome, Jenny. Awesome. Wow. Well, that's been a quick interview. I feel like it's flown by, man.
I talk fast. I'm sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. And feel free to promote anything you're doing right now. Tell us about what you're doing, what you're up to, your websites, your books, everything.
Yeah. Thank you for that. My most recent book actually released in December, and I actually think it's releasing this month in the UK. So it's still brand new. Is called The 4 Dimensions of Extraordinary Leadership, the power of leading from heart, soul, mind, and strength. And this book is really built on the kind of a leadership framework that I have been using with the teams that I've led for the last couple of decades. In that, I recognized it, and this is part of my own leadership journey, was that, I would lead very strategically. I'm a planner, I'm a thinker, and so I would really lead from that side. But I would lack some of the relational strengths, as we've talked about throughout the podcast, is that sometimes I would miss the relational side of leadership. And so as I was working with teams, I really felt like great leaders, extraordinary leaders, need to learn how to have great relational leadership. They need to know how to be great spiritual leaders, even if you're in a marketplace setting that doesn't allow for your faith to be very public. There's still ways for you to be a strong spiritual leader. Right. We need to be great strategic leaders. We need to be great visionary leaders. So those 4 things, I felt like, all of us as leaders will tend to be strong in 1 or 2 of them, but then we'll also have a weak dimension or 2. And so in my training with teams through the years, I've really tried to help us understand that learning to lead from all 4 dimensions is really critical for your success as a leader. And then as I was putting it into book form, it just, I felt like God gave me this grand aha, is that here it is right there in the Great Commandment in Mark, where, Jesus is saying the Great Commandment is love the Lord your God with all of your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength. The implication of that passage is that those 4 things are our whole being. So Jesus is teaching us to love God with all 4 of those dimensions. Right. And from a leadership perspective, I feel like we need to bring our whole being to the leadership table. And oftentimes we will bring just one dimension or another. And, so for me, I will bring that mind part, that very strategic part. Mm-hmm. But if I'm not bringing those other dimensions, my leadership is going to be lacking. And so the 4 Dimensions book really talks about that. It looks at those 4 dimensions and says, there's an assessment in there that helps you kind of discern which one are you strong in, which one are you weak in. And then I kind of help unpack that by using stories of my own, stories of other leaders, and helping us figure out as leaders, how do we lead from our extraordinary best? And I believe that's when we learn to lead from all 4 dimensions. So that book is brand new on my website, JenniCatron.com, JenniCatron.com. Tons of information there. You can read a chapter, you can take the assessment, you can watch a video, and just learn all about that. And then also at my website, you can read about some of my other books, as well as some of the coaching and the consulting stuff that I do. So, and it's a great way to stay in touch. You can sign up for my newsletter, and I'm always sharing leadership information and different resources there as well. So I'd love to stay connected with everyone via the website. Awesome.
It's been great, Jenni. I mean, I've read the book. You sent me the book, and I've been going through it today, and I've been inspired by it. I've been sharpened, reminded, challenged at places. Just really, really good, really, really sound, good, inspiring leadership book. Highly recommend it. I've enjoyed this interview today. It's been, I felt like I've been listening to you, and I've heard myself at times, and I felt, I do that, don't I? That's how I can be quite driven too. And there's so many different traits that you spoke about that I see in myself. When I was at primary school, I was that leader. In fact, my school report says Errol is the leader amongst his friends. I was like 10 years old, And,
right. Yep.
So
yep.
I can so relate to a lot of what you said today. Thank you for being so open and helping us to kind of connect the dots really in our own journey and see practical ways forward for ourselves. Thank you, man. It's been a blessing. God bless you. Thank you for your time today, man.
Errol, thank you so much. Thank you for all that you're doing to inspire and just equip leaders, and especially young leaders and entrepreneurs. I love your heart for that. I have a deep passion for young leaders. And so I'm grateful for people like you who are creating space for the conversation and doing everything you're doing to pour into leaders. So thank you as well. It's been an honor, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Awesome. Thank you. God bless you, man. Thank you again for joining us today on the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast. I pray you've been inspired, you've been lifted, you've been encouraged to take your personal leadership to the next level. We really encourage you guys to just take action, make it happen, do something, start somewhere, go out and change the world in some way, big or small. Guys, if you've enjoyed the podcast today, please share with your friends, share with your loved ones, your colleagues, someone out there you think might benefit from hearing this great content. And if you want some more questions answering, you got a question, email me, Errol@ErrolLawson.com. Or if you want a free 30 to 45 minute coaching session with myself around the leadership challenge or issue you're working on in your business, your church, or in your organization, please feel free to email me right away or get you booked in. It's Errol@ErrolLawson.com. Thank you again for listening. Go to our iTunes page, check it out, check out the previous episodes. Give us a nice review. That would be awesome. Really appreciate if you could do that for us. We really appreciate you just for being here and listening. Thank you so much. God bless you. We'll see you on the next episode of The Rising Generation.